Shit. Hello everyone and welcome back to EuroFever Garage. As always, I am your host Donovan and welcome back to the channel. In front of me is not only one of my dream cars that I've always wanted, but it's one of two vehicles that we are now bringing onto the channel. I know it's been some time since we last posted and I'm very sorry for that, but it's just been a very hectic past 8 months. I've not only gone through one, but two jobs. And not only have we gotten one, but two cars, like I mentioned, to join the channel. With that being said, let's get into a little bit what's going on and where we are now. All right, so as I mentioned, it's been quite some time since we last posted, and there's a reason for that. Having gone through two different job changes now, I just didn't have a lot of time or the energy to really film, let alone edit to the quality and standard that I really want to be posting about. And now that I'm gonna have a little bit more time on my hands to go to events, film, work on these cars, and actually get stuff out on a more frequent basis, I would love to just sort of reintroduce, what EuroFever Garage is, help set expectations going forward, just because everything's been changing so rapidly in my life, and give a duly needed update to the channel. So, first one being is the car behind me. Now there's going to be a dedicated video, but this is Stella, my 2000 BMW 750 IL. The short story of it is, bought it off of Facebook, found it in Rhode Island, and drove it 2,000 miles back. Now there's a lot more to that story that will be coming up, and I really hope you guys enjoy that video. But again, she's not necessarily new to me now, just new to the channel. I have had her since August of 2023 now, and it's been a long time coming that I've been really trying to put out a video for the car. I haven't found the creative vision that I wanted to make for it, so we'll make a simple video on it, just discussing a little bit more of the features of the car. On top of that, behind me, as you can see, we are now in a garage. So this is a two-car garage that's tandem style where you can park them in a line. And because of that, there's less width, but there's a decent amount of length. So working on the cars is a bit difficult. But to get around that, I got a pair of quick jacks so that I could go up rather than sideways. Now, they are the SLX 5000, so they are rated to lift this car, just barely. But the jacking points are actually a little narrow, so I had to get a pair of 2x4s that I'm getting kind of jerry-rigged up to fit the difference in length of jacking points. Now, I mentioned that there was a second car, and it's going to be shown later in this video, but it's actually pretty much the same as this car, just a little bit newer. So I'll leave that with you for now, but as I mentioned, going back into the rest of the garage, in the back you'll see a lot of the stuff that has already been done. I did a big maintenance run on the 1 Series that wasn't filmed just because it was stuff that needed to be done. Valve cover, radiator, water pump, thermostat, some hoses, oil filter housing, gasket. I didn't want to have to go through the process of filming and editing that video because not only did I have to do that, but I was also out this previous weekend and it was a whole mess. So needless to say, there's going to be a lot more videos on the cars that are arriving on the channel, as well as, again, more maintenance that's done on the 1 Series and anything on the 4 Series before it is sold. On that note as well, the 4 Series is now listed for sale, mostly on Facebook and the BMW forums, so the listing will be in the description down below. Any questions can be regarded to the contact info in that listing, so be sure to check it out if you're in the Texas area. Moving to the back of the garage, there's not much left. Just picked up an air compressor for some basic power tools, got my Milwaukee's set up, and a lot of these tools are just laid out because of the 1 Series work that I had just finished, just haven't had time to put them away. So with all that being said, instead of me just talking about how much I love these cars, let's go take them for a drive. I'd like to welcome you all to Stella, my 2000 BMW E38 750 IL with the V12. That's a mouthful, so let me break it down for you. Previous to this car, there was the E32 7 Series. That was the first car to launch the M70 V12. It was the first time anyone had put a V12 inside of a production vehicle. It's the second time BMW made a V12. The first time was in an airplane. Now, obviously, BMW learned a few things and they launched their third generation 7 Series in 1995. The E38 was launched, and if you are familiar with the car, it was the vehicle that was in Transporter, it was in James Bond, it was the Tupac vehicle that he got shot in. This car has had a very storied past, and this car in particular as well. I am the 5th owner and hopefully the last, because I plan on keeping this car. This has been one of my dream cars for ages. I mean, for the past 6 years, I was looking for one of these, and it took quite some time. I almost bought one in 2022. Things just didn't work out with that car, and I'm very, very glad it didn't, because found out that there were a few more problems in it that I didn't notice. And after months talking with the seller on this car, we finally agreed to have a meeting, and I flew all the way up to Rhode Island and bought the car. Now, I don't want to deep dive into the car now just because I am going to make a dedicated video for it. God. The torque. I have had this car now for 8, 9, whatever it is, months, and every time I drive it, I'm just so enamored. It reminds me of the old times when you could have been an executive driving cross country. You know, you've got your car phone talking about the latest earnings report and just eating the miles away. 2,000 miles from Rhode Island down to Texas, and man, this thing was just 23 miles to the gallon. I cannot be more ecstatic about this car, and it's so good for it to finally be in my possession. And I've done some work to the car, like I mentioned. It wasn't perfect. It's not going to be perfect, and that's why I wanted this car, because, you know, in all honesty, it's really not the best example. I mean, as I mentioned, being the 5th owner, back in 2005, the second owner got in an accident and they had to actually replace the engine. So while the engine has only about 100,000 miles, the body has about 140. It does show some wear and tear here and there. There's some cosmetic things. There's a little bit of rust. It was owned in the Northeast, and these cars are pretty prone to rust in certain areas. But structurally, it's fine. You know, I've had it inspected, looked over through and through, and nothing is of major concern. There's no reason why I would be worried to drive this for another 10 years minimum. This car was bought because it's a project of love. You know, as I mentioned, always wanting one. Now that I have one, what's the plan with it? And it's just to restore it. It's so refreshing being in a car of this vintage. Everyone goes for E46s and E39s, and for good reason. I love those cars. There's no reason why you shouldn't be in one of those. But driving one of these, and you just feel different. Not in like I'm better than you because I drive a 7 Series, but because it's just so much more nice. It's the fit and finish, everything covered in leather, the dual pane windows. It's just endless amounts of luxury in here, and to be an owner of one of these, you really get a feel of where BMW was back in the early 2000s. This is just peak BMW design to me. Yes, the E46 is absolutely stunning. The E39 is even more stunning in my opinion, but nothing tops this in terms of a sedan. By no means am I the leading expert on automotive design, but I've seen some BMWs, I've driven a lot of BMWs, I've owned a few BMWs, and nothing makes me feel the way this does. My 4 Series is pretty dang close, but just the way this car makes you feel, the way it drives, the way it looks, there's very few qualms I have with the car. And it doesn't have that many issues. Yes, it has the hydraulic suspension in the rear that is impossible to replace unless you rebuild it, but I have parts for it. It was done by the previous owner, so I'm not worried about that for at least 30 to 50,000 miles. And even once it does go, I'll probably end up replacing it with coilovers or whatever I can get my hands on at the time. But this car is not going to be driven hard. I don't expect a lot of wear and tear on the vehicle other than the heat of Texas. Right now it's about 92 degrees and I'm ice cold with this AC. The tinting that I put on is ceramic, so there's a lot of heat rejection. And overall, the shades in the car keep the car pretty cool. It does get very hot. Don't mistake me there. It is still very, very hot when it sits in the sun. But that's all cars. Like you can't get around physics and thermodynamics, like whatever. Now, like I mentioned, since the last time we've posted, I've gotten 2 cars. This is one of them, and the other one's the same. So let's transition to that car now. I get that old school is not for everybody. It's tough to maintain an old car, and because of that, that's why it gets stuck for the weekend job. What gets taken over for the daily steed is a 2017 BMW 750, but with a V8. And along with that V8 comes 2 turbos. On top of that, we're rear-wheel drive only, no X-Drive. The pre-LCI was the last 7 Series generation that you could get a rear-wheel drive in the V8. Now, why did I go with a second 7 Series when I'm working from home? That's a great question, and honestly, I don't know the answer of that. I didn't know I was going to be getting this job necessarily when I was buying this car, and the story's pretty funny because I was originally looking for 440s and F6 650s. I know it's a little bit weird, but let me break it down. Being that I'm coming from a 4-cylinder 4 Series, I really love the platform, and I still do. I just wanted to get in the B58. The thing is, when you look at B58 4 Series, you're looking at about $28,000 to $32,000, with some being below that with higher miles. And for the same money, you could just be buying a 6 Series that has more power, Alcantara headliner, potentially adaptive cruise, Bang & Olufsen sound system, ventilated seats, massage seats, all for the same money. And I just love the design too. Obviously, being a coupe guy, the Grand Coupe is the more practical option, and honestly it's what I looked for more than the coupes, because in the coupes the back seats are useless. I'm 5'9", 5'10" on a good day, and I just couldn't fit in them for the life of me. But in the Grand Coupe you could at least use the back seats. Not that I would be using them often, but at least I had them. And I was this close to buying one, flew out to Atlanta, had my check in hand, was ready to buy it. And honestly, I don't know. It didn't feel right to me. The deal wasn't lining up. I couldn't justify it, and I left. I flew back home, and in all honesty, I was ready to end the search there. I was just about to say, hey, let's postpone this till a better time when interest rates come down, when maybe I'm in a little better of a spot financially, to actually afford a BMW. This car had come up earlier in my search, and they originally wanted about $4,000 more than where I was kind of looking. And of course, after the search, I said, let me give it through the weekend. I went back to the website where this car was listed, and lo and behold, they dropped the car $4,000, and it was now in my budget, and it had everything that I was looking for. I have the original window sticker, and again, I'll go into more detail once I actually make a video for the car. But man, is this car loaded. I mean, an original sticker price of $121,000, and I was able to get it for $100,000 off. And what really sold me on the car was the service history. I mean, I was able to go back till the very first time. The dealership that it came from was the one that serviced it its whole life. So while it's had 2 owners, they're technically the same because it came from a lease that got transferred to a normal ownership. And so I'm the 2nd/3rd owner. I have all the service history that I was able to pull up back from my technicians at BMW. The car has been very well taken care of, and I'm just very impressed at the care that was taken in this vehicle by the owner. There's really not much to show for the wear and tear other than a greasy steering wheel, some marks on the seats, but outside of that, I mean, man, this is a monster. Now, coming from the V12, I was really excited to see how 20 years, or let's say 17 years of development had really advanced in the 7 Series world. And I had driven these cars plenty of times when I worked at the dealership. To say that they put in some work, I mean, it's definitely an understatement. I believe the windows are still dual paned, but they are thinner. Soundproofing technology has just improved, so it's definitely whisper quiet in here. Only reason why I'm sort of talking a little bit louder is because I've got the air going. It is, again, 90 degrees here in Texas, 96, and I have to have the AC blowing a little bit. But I've got my ventilated seats on, I've got massage seats, I've got my sunshades up, I've got Comfort Plus activated. I mean, it's just so freaking quiet in here. And yes, it doesn't drive as good as the 4 or the 1 Series, and yes, it's more wallowy and heavy, and yes, it's got the N63 that's not the most reliable motor in the world, but so what? I like it. I just did a road trip in the car. It was about 600 miles round trip, and I got 30 miles to the gallon. I think average over the entire trip was 28, but one of the trips that I had on our longer stints was 30 miles to the gallon. And I kind of struggle to hit that on the 4 Series now. When I first got it, I got about 32, 35 if I really, really try. And now I get maybe 29, and that's more due to the tuning and just driving it maybe a little bit more aggressively. It's not about the efficiency for me. If it was, I would have gotten a Prius. I would have gotten an i4. But I don't know, I just right car, right time. I looked at this and I was like, yeah, that looks like my Stella. And I'd like to welcome this car to the channel. This is Julia, with a G, mind you. This is Julia, my G12 BMW 750. Now that was a lot. I know I've been rambling on for quite some time, and I want to say thank you all for keeping up with us, and thank you for almost 100 subscribers. I want to get posting again more regularly, and I will try my best to keep up with a once-a-month schedule. But thank you all for staying with us. Thank you for watching what we do, for contributing and commenting on the videos. It really means a lot that there are other people, out there like me and like Garrett, and that we can make a small little community of our own. So if you like what we're doing, give a like, drop a comment, subscribe if you will. As always, I'm your host, Donovan, and until next time, thank you for watching EuroFever Garage.